My name is Dave, and I've been working in healthcare for over 20 years now. Most of my career has been spent in nursing homes and hospitals, places where I've encountered more than my fair share of unsettling and unexplainable occurrences. Among these, one of the most chilling phenomena is the sight of the mysterious figure in black. This ominous presence has become a harbinger of death in the facilities I've worked at, always appearing before a resident passes away. Let me share with you one of my most haunting experiences during my time at a small, old hospital. In my years working in nursing homes, I've seen many things that defy explanation, but nothing compares to the figure in black. This apparition would dart across the hallways, always in the periphery of my vision, moving too quickly to fully comprehend. It never stayed long, just a fleeting shadow that would send chills down my spine. The most unsettling part was the pattern that followed. Within 24 hours of seeing this figure, a resident would invariably pass away, and as if that weren't enough, within a week, another death would occur. It was as if this dark presence was an omen, a grim reaper of sorts, heralding the end for those unfortunate enough to be under its gaze. The small hospital where I worked had a history that spanned many decades. With only about 30 beds, it was a quiet place most of the time, but it carried an air of the past that was impossible to ignore. The basement housed the old morgue, a place that always gave me an uneasy feeling. Adding to the eerie atmosphere was an old, creaky elevator that connected the basement to the main floor right outside the nurses' station. This elevator had a mind of its own, often coming up from the basement in the middle of the night, its doors opening to reveal an empty cab. It was as if the ghosts of the past were still using it, reminding us of the hospital's long and sometimes dark history. One specific night still haunts me to this day. We were in the middle of our night shift, the hospital quiet except for the occasional beeping of monitors and the soft murmur of patients. Suddenly, the old elevator's doors opened with a creak, echoing through the empty hallway. We all froze, our eyes fixed on the open cab. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over us, knowing what this usually meant. We exchanged uneasy glances, silently acknowledging the unspoken truth. Someone was about to pass away. The air felt thick with anticipation, each of us mentally preparing for the inevitable. It was as if the elevator itself was a harbinger, its random appearances always signaling an impending death. It was late, and we were sitting at the nurses' station when suddenly a TV blared loudly down the hall. The volume was so high that it startled us, breaking the usual nighttime silence. My co-worker and I decided to investigate. As we walked down the hall, the sound grew louder, yet the atmosphere remained eerily silent, with no other signs of life. We passed several empty rooms, all dark and quiet, until we reached the maintenance room. A "Do Not Enter" sign hung on the door, making the situation even more unsettling. The noise was definitely coming from inside. With a sense of foreboding, we knew we had to check it out despite the warning. Despite our apprehension, my co-worker and I knew we had to open the door to the maintenance room. With a deep breath, I turned the handle and pushed it open. To our shock, the room was almost completely empty, except for one thing: a TV turned up to full volume, blaring static. There were no chairs, no tools, nothing else that should have been there. The sight was both surreal and terrifying. We stood there for a moment, trying to process what we were seeing. It was as if the TV had been deliberately placed there to unsettle us. The sheer volume of the static was deafening, making the empty room feel even more oppressive and foreboding. Gathering my courage, I stepped into the room, the static from the TV almost unbearable. I walked over to the TV and turned it off, plunging the room into a heavy silence. Feeling a strange presence, I spoke aloud, addressing whatever unseen entity might be there. "Please," I said, "there's a sick baby next door who needs to sleep. Be quiet." The words felt odd coming out of my mouth, but as soon as I finished speaking, the oppressive atmosphere seemed to lift. The room fell completely silent, and the sense of foreboding dissipated. It was as if my request had been heard and respected by whatever or whoever was causing the disturbance. After that night, there were no further problems with the TV. The rest of my shift passed uneventfully, but I couldn't shake the feeling of what had happened. As I sat at the nurse's station, I reflected on the incident. The silence that followed my request was too immediate, too deliberate to be a mere coincidence. It felt as if an unseen presence had acknowledged my words. I pondered the nature of the eerie events that seemed to plague the hospital, wondering if spirits from the old morgue or the countless patients who had passed through its halls still lingered. It was a chilling thought, but one that seemed to fit the inexplicable occurrences I had witnessed over the years. The hospital, with its long history and aged walls, felt like a place where the past and present often blurred, leaving those of us who worked there to deal with the unsettling consequences.